Hello, my name is Laura Rupel, and welcome back to the Detours in Music podcast. Today we're in Season 2, Episode 17 with Danna Sundet, Professor of Oboe at Kent State University and Director of the John Mack Oboe Camp, Principal Oboist of the Eerie Philharmonic, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy.
I love the title of your podcast of Detours in Music, because I think that a wonderful life as an artist or just a human being brings a lot of detours, and we are resistant to change. But I think detours make us better human beings. And detour can be kind of a distracting word, you know, but I don't think it's distracting. I think it's adventurous.
Yeah.
So my life as a musician now. So I'm the principal oboe player with the Eerie Philharmonic. I do a lot of playing around the Cleveland area in area orchestras with Blue Water Orchestra, Trinity Cathedral. And, you know, I'm asked frequently to play with Akron and Canton and Charleston, West Virginia, and just a lot of orchestras in a tri-state area. I don't always have the time to do those jobs, but I do the ones that I can. I play in several professional chamber ensembles. The Somerset trio is oboe, horn, and piano. And that was a group that I picked up during the pandemic as my pandemic survival group with our assistant principal horn player in the Eerie Philharmonic and our wonderful pianist from the Eerie Philharmonic. And we meet in Pittsburgh on Monday evenings to rehearse. Okay, so then I teach at Kent State University as a full professor. I just got back from playing with the Bellingham Festival of Music in Washington State. That's one of my summer regular gigs that I just adore doing. And that's for the entire month of July. I am the artistic coordinator for the Kent Blossom Music Festival. So I help run the Kent Blossom Music Festival as well as program all of the chamber music and oversee the concerts that are being played during the summer, even when I'm not around. What I do during the year, because so much of what musicians do is plan well in advance. And as you know, I'm the director and artistic director of the John Mack Oboe Camp. So I oversee all the aspects of running the John Mack Oboe Camp, including, you know, hiring the team of teachers that go down to North Carolina to teach and program all of the assignments that all the students play. I'm sure there's other jobs. I have a lot of interests, and I go with those detours as you pointed out.
Yeah. I'm curious about your start in music.
From childhood, I'll be brief. I grew up in Brazil, Africa, and Spain. My mother played as an amateur pianist, and so she involved herself in our schools overseas to make sure that we got some sort of music training. So under my mom's tutelage, you know, I'd play recorder and Mary Poppins productions, that kind of thing. But it was very amateur with very small group of students at those schools in those various countries. And then when we moved to the United States, when I was in the 6th and 7th grade, we moved to the Houston area, north of Houston in Humble, Texas. So I see myself as a product of a really strong Texas Music Education Association training. I was playing the flute, and a really savvy band director who I still keep in touch with today and send them Christmas cards and letters of appreciation, because I would not be where I am today without this middle school band director saying, hey, I think you would be better suited to play the oboe. Let me give you some lessons on the oboe and let's see how that goes for you. And then putting me in touch with how to find a good private teacher. And my private teacher that I found in the Houston area was the professor of music at Rice University, Shepherd School of Music. So starting from the 9th and 10th grade, I had my training at the Rice, at Shepherd School of Music, playing in the college orchestras, going through all of the district, region, area, state ensembles, playing with the Houston Youth Symphony, and going to Interlochen during the summers. I owe all of that to really strong music education program that goes on in Texas.
Yeah. It seems like maybe pretty early you realized you wanted to pursue music after high school.
It was just like a magnet that was so attracted to music. And I guess a defining moment for me was going to Interlochen during the summers. And then I remember going to a Houston symphony concert down at Jones Hall, and seeing the musicians come out of the door that the musicians come out of and go to their cars with their beautiful black clothes and their gig bags over their shoulders. And I just looked at that and said, I want that to be me someday. And worked really hard to make that me someday. And so I never take it for granted, even when I'm coming out of those back doors dressed in the nice clothes and with my gig bag over my shoulder. I'm so grateful that turned out to be me.
Where did you attend school and why?
My private teacher at the Rice University, his name is Michael Rosenberg, and he just retired from the Stuttgart Radio Orchestra as their solo English horn player. And even though he was trained at Northwestern in the Chicago area, from a very early age, I would ask him, who's the best oboe teacher in the world right now? And every time he would say, without question, it's John Mack. And he went to the John Mack Oboe camp himself and put himself out there, even though he was a professor at Rice. He participated and performed and took me along with him. And so I guess from when I was 16, I met John Mack and went to the John Mack Oboe camp, as you have done, and said, I really think this is the man that I would like to study with. So I did. I was so fortunate. I mean, it was so hard to get in. The bar was really, really high. There were probably 50 or 60 students that would audition to be in his class every single year. And he only take the number of students. So if 2 students graduated, then he would take 2 students. And we had to compete against graduate students as well for those positions. And so I just really made that my focus. And I was fortunate to study and be part of his class, and studied as an undergraduate all 4 years with John Mack. And then I won jobs fairly early. The position that I perform in today with principal oboe with the Eerie Philharmonic, I won the second oboe job when I was a junior in college, and then a couple years later won the principal oboe job. But so I started working so early, and I took a huge detour, as you'll find out later in our conversation, with raising a family. And so I never really needed a master's degree. I was performing, earning a decent salary early on as a professional musician. So I never needed that master's degree. But when my youngest child started kindergarten, I thought, I want to teach college. And so I went back to get my master's degree at Kent State University, which I really value because my students that come in to Kent State University, I was in their shoes and I know what it's like to be a student at Kent State University. So it helps me to guide them more thoroughly in that position. So those were my two schools, CIM and Kent State University.
Yeah. Is there something you struggled with in your undergrad?
Like immediately what comes to mind is two things. At that time in Cleveland, the CIM really didn't have an established dorm where students could live. So we all had to find apartments on our own. And, going from living at home to running your own apartment and paying all of your bills and, having a car and taking it to the auto mechanic when something goes wrong. And, that's real life. And just being thrown into, paying rent and the light bill and the water bill and all of those things really distract you from all of your academic studies and musical studies. I enjoyed it. I ran a really nice little apartment and had guests over and dinner parties and stuff like that. But I guess that can be a distraction of wow, I just can't practice 6 hours a day because I have real life hitting me. It wasn't, I think it was a struggle because I don't think that I grew as much in my undergraduate as much as I would have liked to have grown as a professional musician. The other thing I would say is the growing up in the Texas Music Education Association system, there was always a carrot in front of your nose with the next thing to practice. You got to win first chair in districts to move on to region. You've got to get first chair in region to move on to area. You want to play in the all state. You want to play, to concerto competition with, the Houston Youth Symphony, concerto competition with the Rice Orchestra. There was always that carrot in front of my nose. And then when I got to college and it was like, wait a minute, this is kind of boring. It's just go to classes every day and practice for your next lesson next week and maybe a college concerto competition. I found that not inspiring. And I feel that when I look back over those times, I did struggle with a little bit of stagnation in college, having to deal with what we talked about before, life, and not having that carrot in front of my nose and having to create those own carrots in front of your nose.
Yeah.
I struggled with those two things, I would say.
Yeah. Do you have advice for people for maybe that second point you mentioned of having to create your own internal objectives maybe?
Yes, I think that when we've got to always be looking ahead as a professional musician. And if you want to do something during the summer, you have to start thinking about that in October and November, not in January or February.
Yeah.
There are a lot of opportunities, but so often school gets us bogged down with completing that next assignment, writing that next paper. Oh, I can't really think about the summer until the spring semester. No, I think sit down and write down an outline now in August, in September, of things that you would like to accomplish personally and professionally because you're training to be a professional musician. Say, start doing that in August before school starts. Start writing down an outline.
Are there other things that you hear yourself saying to students advice-wise that are maybe issues you're seeing come up?
Yeah, I've raised 4 children now. Successful 4 children. I'm so pleased. And my husband and I say that the most difficult times in life are from 18 to about 28.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 10 years of real difficulty of wanting to stand on your own 2 feet as an adult, pay your own bills, all those things. It will come. And the mental health has gotten even more difficult, I think, maybe since social media and since the pandemic. And so I just really think that find mentors, 2 or 3 mentors that you can talk life out with on a regular basis. You just call them up and say, can I just use you as a sounding board for what I'm thinking of next? Or I've been really struggling. Don't be afraid to reach out and really use those mentors. I mean, we are so honored when young people want to sit us down and, like at the John Mack Oboe camp, can I have some time tonight? And can we just talk about stuff? Sure, let's go. We're honored. So really use that as to getting through those difficult 10 years.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of those 10 years and it feels, I'm excited to know it'll end. Have you ever thought of what you would be doing if you weren't in music?
Oh, that's a good one, because I kind of always was told by one of my mentors that said, don't be a musician if you can see yourself doing anything else. Because if you can see yourself doing something else, go for that something else. You can still be a musician. It doesn't really have to be all or nothing. I remember another defining moment where Joe Robinson, former principal oboist of the New York Philharmonic, I was in New York. His wife, Mary Kay, and Joe are still just really precious friends to me. I just saw them because they come out to Bellingham, Washington too. That's a special place for them. And I see them regularly. And so at this time, I was staying at their house in New Jersey and going to the New York Philharmonic with Uncle Joe in the car. And he said to me, what are your 3 major goals in your life? And then he just sat there in the car as he drove to New York, completely silent, as I was, in the passenger seat. And I don't know how I had the know-how or the wisdom to say this to him way back when I was 18, but I said, I want a really successful marriage, and I want a successful family, and I want a successful career in music, however that looks. I don't know how it's going to look, but those are my 3 goals. And so that was a defining moment by Uncle Joe that was, put out there by him for me to come up with those goals. And so I've always worked to make those come to pass in my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Has your career focus changed? I can think of hearing you talk, maybe deciding you wanted to teach at a university could be one of those. Taking over the John Mack Oboe camp could be another.
Yes, our focus changes. And, young people from about 16 to 28 often have a script to their life. And one of my precious colleagues, Tom Moore, used to say at the John Mack Oboe camp, because he would do sessions on recording the oboe. And he would say, for all of you who have that script written out in your life, just take that piece of paper and tear it up and throw it away, because life will unfold in various ways. So you're right that when we go to a conservatory, we think, hey, I need to take orchestral auditions. And so even though when you're a senior or even graduate school, even though you do not feel prepared at all in your head to win that orchestral position. I started taking those auditions and saying, okay, I'm going to take this audition. I'm going to win an orchestra job. I did not feel prepared. I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to play La Mer and La Scala cleanly. All those scary, excerpts. And so I took my share of auditions, but it was very disheartening because you come home with a credit card full of bills for having to live in hotels in various parts of, the country. That was very difficult. So for me, I chose to raise a family, to be married and to raise a family. Even when my children were little, I took some auditions, but I'm not going to lie. The only time I could really practice was put them to bed at 9 o'clock, kind of fall asleep with them, force myself to get up at 10 o'clock, practice from like 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., fly out to go take that audition, come home having not won the audition, have to pay those bills. So yeah, I just decided to focus on a different area of my life, and not, do that. So then my focus became to take only auditions that I could drive to. And I started winning them. So I played in the Cleveland Opera and the Cleveland Ballet and, Trinity Cathedral and the Orchestra Red. I had enough work pieced together and teaching. I think I had 35 private students. So I had enough work in the Cleveland area that I was totally satisfied and fulfilled, and raising my children, doing what I wanted to do with having a family. It wasn't until those orchestras started folding, when the opera and the ballet folded, we all had to reinvent ourselves. And that's when I started teaching or going to Kent State University as an adult and got my master's degree, and then got the position as a adjunct professor, and then assistant, and then associate, and then full professor with the university. So boy, I took my series of detours as life took me.
When you define the word detour, you kind of did this at the beginning, but how would you, I guess, kind of overarching say that word has impacted your life?
I would say that I am very open to opportunities that come my way. And my teacher, John Mack, would say, if a great opportunity comes your way, always say yes, and then figure out how you're going to implement that idea later. So even though ideas can be super daunting, okay, someone wants you to play the Mozart concerto or the Strauss concerto with the orchestra. Oh no, am I in shape to be able to do that like in a month? You just say and you figure it out.
What are your current goals for maybe your studio at Kent State? It could be for Oboe camp, your practice personally, things like that.
Oh my, this is this is a big one. And this is a great question from you, asking someone my age, because you're right. We oftentimes get into kind of routines of school is starting and I've got these classes to teach, and how can I inspire these students? So I will revisit this question a lot this semester. So thank you for putting it forth.
Yeah.
Well, I've been spending the last 3 days trying to learn how to teach an asynchronous understanding music class where I've got 50 students enrolled. And I told my director, when he told me that he wanted me to teach this class this year, I said, I don't even like to online shop.
Yeah.
I love to teach students face to face and in person. So, this is going to be a challenge to me to never see these students and just interact with them online. So,
Mhm.
my goal is to successfully teach these 50 students
Mhm.
and to be um, not rebellious into going into something that I really don't want to do, because that was
Mhm.
obvious, but to embrace learning something new and learning a different format. And honestly, my kids enjoyed, at least some of them enjoyed online classes because it saved them time and all that. So I'm going to embrace that as one of my goals this year. Of course, I adore teaching my studio class. I'll have, I think, 7 or 8 students. I would like to increase the numbers. Every school, I think all the enrollment after the pandemic, I think schools lost almost 25% of their enrollment.
Mhm.
So, of course, the pandemic scared art students when they see the New York Philharmonic and the Metropolitan Opera struggling to perform. Then our students are rethinking their personal professional goals. And
Mhm.
so one of my goals is to increase my studio size to maybe 10 or 12 students again, and to, of course, the students that I have, I love to show them uh, that you can be a great musician. You can, um, they see me running Camp Blossom Music Festival. They see me running the John Mack Oboe Camp. They see me playing professionally all over, uh, Pennsylvania and Ohio. I just want to be a good role model to them and to keep the standards high,
Mhm.
keep the standards of performing high, even though you're doing all these other things. I think my advice to them is learn how to practice well and efficiently during those formidable years so that you can take these detours and be
Mhm.
successful at them, because you're not wasting time when you sit down at the reed desk, or you're not wasting time practicing when you sit down.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've got a lot of goals, and I'm sure I will think of a lot more after we hang up.
That's okay. What was it like to transition to becoming the director of the John Mack Oboe Camp?
Oh my. Oh, that's a great question. Um, you know, um, in professional orchestras, there are orchestra committees that represent the 65 musicians to your management. And when I was voted on the orchestra committee, and then for many years led the negotiating committee to rewrite our contracts and to negotiate what we were getting paid and what we were
Mhm.
getting paid for mileage and all those things, um, those gave me the tools in order to run the John Mack Oboe Camp. When the board approached me, I remember opening up a notebook, a spiral notebook, and on the left side of the page, I wrote down the purpose for which the camp served during Mr. Mack's life.
Mhm.
And on the right side of the page, what was so great about him that made 90 students want to flock to North Carolina every summer to study with him.
Mhm.
And so then I wrote down, if I were to accept this position, what would my vision be? Um, and with all of that, then I could go back to the board and I could say, um, this these are my findings, and this is my vision. And if you share my vision, And if you'll trust me and go with this vision, then I'll take the position. But if you want to go in a different direction, I'm totally okay with that also.
Mm-hmm.
So they trusted me, and they went with that vision of basically being the team leader. I firmly believe that there is no person to fill any other person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
That's impossible. And there was no heir apparent to John Mack. He taught all of us differently. He was a great teacher. And so I wanted to work as a team with other Mack students, to go and best represent his teaching, so that all of you at the Oboe camp can see that we have different approaches to music and reed making and style, but kind of our final product is very similar.
Yeah. I think for you, doing more administrative things like that, has that always been something that you're also drawn to outside of playing your instrument?
I don't see it as administrative
Mm-hmm.
because I'm assigning 65 students music, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm studying all of your, and I do this for the Kent Blossom Music Festival too. I
Mm-hmm.
study all of your bios, and sometimes I call your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I want, so if I assign you a technical etude, then I may assign you a slower orchestral excerpt. And I want it to be challenging to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, I find that very artistic I mean, I've got my Barrett books and my Fairlings, and I've got a whole binder. I could open up these cabinets behind me and show you my binders like this big, and I'll go through and say, okay, Laura Rubel, okay, I assigned her this last year, so I'm going to assign her this next year.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys also don't know that I have spreadsheets all the way back from the beginning. So people who have attended the John Mack Oboe camp for 30 years, the Mr. Mack never assigned people the same assignment ever again.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back into the spreadsheet. If you come back for 15 years, you will never get the same assignment.
That's awesome.
So I don't find that necessarily as administrative. I see that as part of the artistic part of my brain that wants to be a good teacher and wants to be that carrot in front of your nose for next year.
Yeah.
And search through the repertoire to see what I can assign you.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
I do the same thing with the Kent Blossom Music Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I don't find it necessarily administrative. Yes, part of my job is that, I'm reaching out to donors and getting to know them and seeing if they'll sponsor students, but that's fun too, because they're supporters of the arts.
Mm-hmm.
But learning a huge repertoire of chamber music so that I can do the same thing with assigning a string trio or a string quintet, or, I just love, I think that chamber music is really where it's at in order to be a great all around musician. And so that part of my job as an artist, and people can see it as a detour, but maybe the way it came about was a detour because the members of the Miami String Quartet said, hey, we'll help run this festival if she helps us. And I was like, oh, how nice. I'll be a helper.
Yeah.
And then getting the festival to a point where we could hire a director so that he can sit in the driver's seat and I can go play other music festivals and stuff during the summer and have the festival run without me. And then as soon as the semesters start, then I dive into the pool again and start helping. So I guess, chamber music is big in my life too.
Yeah. And I'm sure doing those assignments not only helps the students to be playing in chamber music, but kind of what you're saying is it helps you to in your music making because now you know more about the field too.
Exactly. And finding good repertoire, where to search, where to find things that may not be out there, and standards too that everybody should know. So
Yeah.
yeah. And it was fun because the students at Ken Blossom Music Festival get to play with the Cleveland Orchestra side by side, and they get to play at Blossom. And so I was at the big dinner with them last Sunday. And so that I, can come back from my music festival and say, hey, I'm the one that assigned you all this music. How did it go? And, for the oboist and the flutist to say, wow, that Villalobos was so hard. We thought we were going to pull our hair out, but we're really glad that you assigned it to us because it made us better players.
Yeah.
I was like, yay.
I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Miss Sundet. I really have looked up to her as the organizer of the John Mack Oboe Camp, which I've attended in the past, and just she has so much life that you can hear in her voice, but you also see it in her teaching and in her playing, and I was really grateful to sit down and talk to her today. As always, you can keep up with the podcast on social media and check out our past episodes and make sure you catch the new ones. Thanks for listening.